This is the Apparelist podcast, designed to bring you real-life conversation about high-level topics relevant to the decorated apparel community.
All right. Well, welcome to August, Apparelist fans. We're rapidly approaching one of the most exciting times of the year, Printing United Expo. Our team is absolutely on fire putting together this year's event, which promises to be more dynamic than ever. Whenever the expo rolls around, I really like to pause and evaluate where the industry really is, right? And so here to shine some light on that topic is someone who I have the utmost respect for and has his finger on the pulse of all print verticals. Ford Bowers is the CEO of Printing United Alliance and is joining this month's episode to discuss everything from the heavy convergence we're still seeing to where he thinks the printing industry is headed. So Ford, thank you so much for joining us.
My absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's kind of walk backwards a little bit to kick things off. You've been in this industry in some way, shape, or fashion for a long time. So walk us through your career and how you landed as the CEO of Printing United Alliance.
I can certainly do that. It was not a determined path. It's not something I set out to do. I've stumbled into it, as lots of people do when they enter the printing industry, but I love it here and will never leave. So I really do enjoy it. I started many years ago, back in the 80s. A friend of mine had a print shop, oddly enough, called Printing Impressions in Kennesaw, Georgia. So I didn't know that some 30 years later I would be having a magazine under my, purview that was also Printing Impressions. But so I used to work a little bit in the evenings, on the weekends, to earn a little extra cash. He was kind enough to teach me how to run a little 2-color Ryobi press for him and do all of that stuff. So that was my first exposure. I didn't stay in the printing industry long at that time. Kind of in and out to a certain extent, but it started maybe in earnest around 2004. I got a job in the flexo industry, and I made flexo plates and did color separations for a color separation outfit. And so then started going on press checks. That led to a job at a company called Millersdale out of Atlanta. Wound up being a project manager there, and did project management for a couple of years there, and wound up running their graphics division. And so that led, because of their profile, not because of mine particularly, because their profile in the industry was fairly high as a wide format printer, fairly large, influential one. Wound up being on the board of directors of SGIA. And so that happened around 2013, I think, is when I was given a position on the board of SGIA. A few years later, my predecessor as CEO stepped down, and some of the board members approached me and said, "Hey, maybe you should try that. That might be right up your alley." So I don't know if that says anything about my printing skills, but they thought this might be a good fit for me. So my last name not being Miller or Zell, it was easy for me to relocate. So that's how I became the CEO of SGIA in 2016. And of course, it's just been, it's been 10, 11 years now that I've been doing that, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. And this really is I think, somewhat suited to my talents and my disposition and my temperament. And it's in the printing industry. It's not printing per se, but I certainly enjoy it, and I love being a part of the industry in a larger fashion, as it were. So that's kind of my short story.
I love it. I feel like it's very serendipitous that Printing Impressions was part of your start. And
it's a little foreshadowing,
Yes.
So just that is really great. Yeah. So I don't know if there were any trademark infringements going on at the time. So, but I've never brought that up. But we'll see. Yeah.
Maybe we just leave that one alone, right?
Yeah, we'll leave that. I think a cease and desist now is probably outdated. So.
Well, hey, you know what? Like you said, a lot of people, that's how they kind of not stumble into the industry, but sort of find it in weird ways, but end up staying because, as you said, it's a really cool industry to be a part of. And now something that's really, I think, unique about Printing United Alliance and then just your role is you get to see everything, right? You see all factions of the printing industry. You get to see commercial, you get to see apparel, you get to see wide format, labeling. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, right? So you get to see this really cool big picture of what the printing industry encompasses. What would you say are some of the common themes or experiences that tie everything together, right? Because we're seeing lots of convergence and lots of common ground here.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously there's a lot that ties us together. And I think that, from the vantage point where I sit, I think we, as individual printers, whatever segment we're in, it's really hard to kind of take in the vista of what is actually the breadth and scope of the printing market. It is an amazingly large industry. I mean, it's number 3 in terms of the establishments. If you look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, we're the 3rd largest manufacturing industry. If you look at the number of companies, I think we're number 10 in terms of employees and number 13 in terms of GDP. So it's a huge, really huge industry. And I have enjoyed getting to know those areas that I wasn't familiar with. I did some flexos and the wide format, side of things. But learning more about the apparel market, the functional printing market, commercial printing, which is where I got my very, very modest start, 30, 40 years ago. It's just been fascinating to see how it's evolved and developed and where it is. So that vantage point is interesting. Obviously, the thing that ties us together to a large extent is ink, right? Ink on something. However it gets there, it's ink on something. So you mentioned convergence. We've been tracking this because even as a printer, I really felt that this was going on prior to 2016. And a lot of that convergence is being driven, it's technological convergence that is doing it. So this is starting to kind of bring everybody together. We don't have the fences up between the segments like we used to. The barriers to entry are much lower than they used to be. So this technological convergence is something that really is making a tighter community for all of printers. And then I think what's also happening at the same time, or has been happening for some years now, is the buying patterns of the people that we serve have changed radically over the last 10, 15, 20 years. So, most printers, prior to this, a brand that needed something in apparel, or a brand that needed something commercial, or a brand that needed some, wrappers, or labels, they had to go to different printers. They don't have to do that anymore, and they don't want to do that anymore. So they expect more of a one-stop shop, and it's an opportunity for printers, obviously, to sell more. You don't want somebody else servicing your client to come in and provide that which you could provide for them if it were not for just another piece of equipment or another process that you could put in place. So both of these things are driving conversions. So technological advances and purchasing behaviors have really changed the way print is bought and made, and by whom it is made. And I think this is going to continue. So
then I'm curious, would you say that being sort of that one-stop shop is really what makes a successful print business these days? We have a lot of conversations. I mean, and obviously us being on the apparel side, a lot of apparel decorators are like, yes, we do now offer promotional products printing. We offer like some wide format services, things like that. Would you say that's what really separates the successful businesses these days? Or is it sort of like a mix of a lot of things?
It's more of a mix. I wouldn't say that you have to diversify your offerings in order to be a successful printer. I think that's it's understandable. I think it depends on where you are and how large you are to a certain extent. So if you're a $100 or $200 million commercial printer or a label printer, and you don't necessarily need to diversify. If you do hundreds of millions of dollars in corrugate, you don't necessarily need to diversify. But if you're a $5 million printer, diversification in order to hold on to your clientele and continue to capture market share, diversification might well be for you. So I would say kind of two things. In terms of what I think, and these are characteristics, these aren't applications or offerings, but you have to have an insatiable curiosity about what's possible, right? So if you have an insatiable curiosity about what's possible, that gives you some momentum, I think, in doing the right thing or the next thing. And then I'm kind of an unflagging desire to meet the next challenge, So these are the people that last. Whether they stay in one lane or get in 5 lanes, it doesn't really matter. But if they're innately curious and they are continuously rising to meet a challenge, those are the characteristics that drive any well-run business, not just printing, but any well-run business. So I would kind of boil it down into those characteristics rather than necessarily the suite of offerings that they have. Although, I think obviously that stems from that curiosity and that rising to meet the challenges. So I think I'd put the characteristics first, then I'd put the expansion of applications second.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. And I know, like, I've even been in conversations with you, in groups of people. We talk about that curiosity, but then we also talk about that, like, getting outside your comfort zone a little bit. You don't have to necessarily, like you said, buy another piece of equipment or things to curiously discover these things that you've not done. You can work with partners. That's the beautiful thing about this printing industry, right? Like you said, it's also a community. All these
Yep.
C words coming to mind
Right.
now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I remember I was at something. I think it might have been a digital packaging summit. One that I think the first one that I attended, which was before we acquired the summits with NAPCO, and they were talking about the size of the digital, corrugated market, and they said it was X amount. I think they were saying it was about $100 million or something like that. And I approached the guy who gave this particular talk, and I said, that doesn't really sound right to me. I said, we're a wide format organization, but we do corrugate, and I do $3 million a year of digital corrugate printing. You can't tell me I'm 3% of that market. I'm just one printer. So, and they said, well, we don't even count you. So they're just counting the people who only do corrugate, right? Okay. So I said, okay, yeah, but there are probably 200 of me, So, and we went down that road because we bought the equipment that could do that. So we just naturally expanded. We knew that they needed pallet wraps,
Right.
why let somebody else sell them a pallet wrap if we were selling them the POS, that went along with it. So it didn't make any sense to me. Just capture that part of the market. And that wasn't hard to do. Yeah, we had to learn a little bit more about how to run corrugate through a hybrid, how to order corrugate so that it didn't come bent or folded or marred in the coatings. And so, it's not like it's easy to do, but it's certainly, something that you can tackle. I didn't have to go out and learn how to run, a flexo press. I didn't have to go out and learn how to do apparel. So I had the same type of equipment, and obviously I wasn't going to be running at 1,200 feet per second, on a hybrid press, a digital press. But at the end of the day, I could still do $3 million a year. And my certainly our clientele was appreciative of that. So yeah, I think that that's kind of the crux of here's a challenge, here's an opportunity, let's go for it.
Right. Perfect example.
Yep.
So something that you said earlier, you were talking about how this industry, we're really seeing a lot of growth, a lot of change, things constantly happen in this industry, despite some of the people being like, oh, well, especially screen printing, oh, it's been around for centuries, nothing ever changes. Right. Like the fact of the matter is the printing industry changes a lot, and it changes pretty frequently. And I think like those of us in it see it happen a lot, and it's not just the technologies, it's these global economic factors that also influence our industry, right? We saw it with COVID. Right. We're seeing it right now with AI. We're seeing it right now with, especially in apparel like supply chain. I was just talking to somebody last week about, new forced labor guidelines and laws happening in the EU that will absolutely impact our industry here in North America. So all of these things constantly change our industry. So in your opinion or observation, which of today's disruptions, today's being used loosely, do you think becomes tomorrow's just normal operating procedure?
Well, I'm not a prophet, but obviously the thing that looms large right now is artificial intelligence, AI. What is this actually going to mean for everybody? It certainly has tremendous potential to disrupt and change the way we do things. It's absolutely going to change buying and purchasing behavior, no question about it. And when it does that, it will change the way printers print and the way printers do work processes and orders and that sort of thing. So and quite honestly, that's what in the wide format arena, when I started at Millersdale, they were 100% analog. I mean, zero digital print except for what they outsourced a little bit here and there. By the time I left 10 years later, it was 95% digital output. So, and had we not changed, we would not have been able to satisfy the customers. So because their buying patterns changed, because they didn't want to do necessarily national rollouts of thousands of each piece. They wanted to do 100 of each piece. And each kit had 800 pieces to it. So, you can't make that pay unless you have the ability to. And so their purchasing behavior determined what we had to do and stay out ahead of. So I think AI is going to change purchasing patterns. I also think it'll help make us better printers. I think it's going to help a lot with processes, predictions, workflows, maintenance. There are a lot of ways to do this. And I don't think we all have to become AI gurus. I think a lot of this will be embedded in the software that we use, the hardware that we use, the MIS systems that we purchase. It'll 5 years from now, it's all going to be there. It's just who's integrated what into it. So we don't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel or become AI experts ourselves. I think it's going to be there kind of embedded into everything we do. It'll just give us a different arsenal, and a different tool set. So I think AI clearly, is one of those generational disruptions. And I think it'll disrupt faster than the internet did. The internet took about 10 years to change buying patterns. If you think of how print was bought before 1990, and then you think how it was bought by the early 2000s, and then even over the last 20 years, digital storefronts and things along those lines. The way that they have bought print now, or many people buy print, has radically changed since the days of the way that they used to create RFPs and orders and so on and so forth. So, and it's gone through several of those iterations. AI is going to change all that again. And everybody will adapt in some form or fashion to it. Yeah. So I don't think we can't downplay what AI will do, and it's not going to take 10 or 15 years.
I fully agree.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting to hear some of the mindset approaches to AI in our industry. Mm-hmm. Most people are very into it. They have that mindset that you just mentioned. Approach it as a tool. It's going to be integrated. It's, all of these things. And then there are some people who are not in favor, right? And we're seeing a lot of that. But I feel like that happens with any big disruption, right? You are always going to have the different mindsets, and I don't want to say teams, but like camps of how people approach it, right? So, but I think the bigger thing you need to really recognize is whether or not you're excited about it. It is going to change. So how are you going to then embrace, right?
Yeah, and even if you don't, I'll confess, I'm not a Luddite per se, but when AI really started taking hold over the last couple of years, and it really became a thing that I knew that I was going to have to grapple with. In the back of my head, I thought, my God, I stayed in the workforce a little too long. I really wish this had waited another 5 years for me to get out of here, and I wouldn't have to deal with any of this, because the implications are huge. And it's not just how am I going to change my workflow. There are security issues, there are data issues, there are privacy issues. This touches everything, and so we don't have the policies or understanding of how this could go off the rails. So those are the things that are a little bit hair raising, despite the fact that I don't have much left to raise. But at the end of the day, you have to make peace with the fact that it's coming. It's a freight train, and get on, enjoy the ride as best you can. If you're going to be around, for the next 5-10 years, then you've got to grapple with it. So again, so I commiserate with those who are less excited, because I'm not giddy about AI. But I understand its importance, and we are doing everything we can to get out ahead of it. So, which is why we started, of course, AI consulting, to help printers kind of assess where they are and where they need to go, that sort of thing. So,
exactly. I feel like that could be like a podcast episode in and of itself. For all the listeners, we'll include some links in the show link that can connect you to our printing AI services. Amy Servi Bonner, she's amazing. She's very helpful. Oh my gosh, she offers so many good resources. For now, before as we really start to round out this episode, I do want to talk about Printing United Expo, right? Because this is the August episode of a Perilous Podcast. September, of course, is when the expo is happening, and there is a lot to unpack with it. We don't have time to unpack everything, but let's kind of like do a little bit discussion. So like it's top of mind right now for the industry, right? Yeah. And so a lot of times people approach the expo with, okay, like I know I want to see this. I have this on my schedule. I'm planning this. Those are all great things to do. I personally am a person who likes to go in and have a plan, right? But say you're an attendee, you're back working for a printer, you're walking the expo floor today. Where do you think the industry's attention is sometimes misplaced? Like, does that make sense? Because sometimes it's like we get caught up in the shiny thing, but what are the things we really should be focused on when you come to the expo?
Printing United Expo is where the entire printing industry unites under one roof. Explore cutting-edge technology from over 800 exhibitors, see live product demonstrations, and discover solutions that can transform your business. With exclusive education sessions, expert insights, and endless networking opportunities, this is the must-attend event for anyone in print. No matter your role, Printing United Expo delivers the innovation, connections, and knowledge to help you stay ahead. Join us this September 23rd to the 25th in Las Vegas. Learn more at printingunited.com and experience the future of print today.
It's a great question, and I think it varies depending on who is going to the expo. I mean, clearly, there's not one answer for everybody, but I would say that were I a printer still, the way that I would approach it, and I probably did not approach it in the most efficient way possible when I was a printer, but of course it wasn't one show at the time. I had to go to 4 shows a year to see everything I wanted to see. So, but I would say that there are 2 main reasons. One is I've got some problems I need to solve. What are the problems I need to solve? And so I'm either going to look for specific software applications. I'm looking for specific hardware. I'm looking for specific substrates. There's some problem I need to solve. Or there's an opportunity that I want to take advantage of, and what do I need to take advantage of? So you have problem solving and opportunity. That you need to lay out in advance just to make sure you cover all your bases. But then there's the aspect of inspiration, right? And so, because to me, it's like kid in a candy store, that sort of thing. So don't ignore the inspirational part of it, but make sure you go with the plan for, attacking an opportunity or solving a problem, but leave enough time so that you can go around, because inspiration may come from a very, unusual place or a place you didn't anticipate. And that will give you, more ideas for the future. So that's really the best advice I can give. And it would be different for somebody who's in the apparel community versus somebody who's in functional print, and whether they plan to diversify or not diversify. I managed by theory of constraints was one of the things I did. So I was always looking, okay, where are the bottlenecks? Okay, well, this year I've got to look at finishing equipment. That's a problem, right? Another thing was, I know that, a lot of printers are selling our customers label. I'm going to look at label presses, so that's attacking an opportunity. But then I would see inspiration in things that other people have developed and do. I mean, I saw a direct-to-object printer that Heidelberg, I haven't seen one in a number of years, and they were printing on soccer balls and suitcases. And so I thought, man, I want one of those. And I thought that would be, I don't have any customers that I know want that stuff, but I sure want one of those, So, but we did wind up, printing on some very unusual things, as a result of just the inspiration that brought to the thinking process, and adapting what we already had to be able to print on unusual types of things. So we would create jigs and, print on different things, running them through a hybrid press and do our best to kind of mimic that sort of thing. So inspiration is also a big part of it. So those are my takeaways from that.
Love that. Whenever I hear like the approach with inspiration, I just think, because printing is alive. It's like this tactile, engaging, immersive experience. And when you walk the expo floor, you feel it. You can like feel it in your system and the creativity and the crowds and the everything. It's
printing. I heard the folks from Tactile that printing makes you feel.
Yes,
right?
It does.
You feel something about printing. It's different than doom scrolling and looking at your Facebook feed or your LinkedIn feed. That's all great. It's all very ephemeral. It's one second, gone the next. Printing has a lasting feeling. It has this haptic, sense about it. And so I think that is, I think, what inspires a lot of us is it's more real. And is becoming more real relative to what we see nowadays, which clearly is not real in the digital world. Not taking anything away from our digital cousins, but at the end of the day, print is very much a real thing for us. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Ford, before we let you end this episode, I always like to, you said you're not a prophet earlier in the episode, but I always like to end our episodes with sort of a crystal ball style question, because it's fun to just like imagine what could be, right? So if you and I sat down again August 3 years from now, what headline do you think we'd talk about that maybe people aren't predicting or might be a little unexpected?
That's another great question. I think if you look at AI, if you look at agentic commerce, if you look at the buying behaviors changing, if you look at the convergence and the technology, it's beginning to mature. There are a lot of, in wide format and areas, and even in apparel to a large extent. The technology is becoming more mature. Unfortunately, what I see is, I think that if you're a very niche-y printer, you're going to be fine. If you're a very localized printer, I think you're going to be okay. If you've got a local marketplace that you satisfy and they know you, that sort of thing. If you're a huge printer, if you're a $100 million label printer or $100 million or $200 million commercial printer, I think you're okay. Unfortunately, I believe that it's going to be rough roads for the $3 to $5 million up to the $20 to $30 million printer. Okay. Because if you think about what it will take to make those adaptions, if you don't have the strength of a niche and if you don't have the strength of a geography working for you to preserve your market and your clientele, or you're just large enough so momentum keeps you going, you're going to have to adapt. And that adaptation requires resources. It requires expertise. It requires investing in things that over and above hardware and MIS systems, what we normally invest in, right? And I see a change in the fundamental firmographics, the number of mid-size, small, medium-sized printers. I see them having a real difficult time, to be quite honest. I think if you're going to be around in 10 years, you've really got to start adapting quickly and hard and figure out how to do this well. If you look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there's about 32,000 printing establishments in this country. That's not a complete number. It doesn't include implants, and there are thousands of those. It doesn't include all the apparel guys. It doesn't include, a lot of folks who, doesn't include publishers who also print. So there are thousands that don't do that. That don't land in that number. But I do see, unfortunately, a hollowing out of the middle. So it doesn't mean there'll be less printing. It just means it's either going to be going next year or it's going to be going to consolidated ownership. So I think that's a challenge. So I think that will change. Is that going to be good or bad? I don't know. Yeah. I have no idea, but it's going to be different. It's definitely going to be different. So unfortunately, I think, I don't know if that's a dire prognostication, but I do see a lot of pressure on those mid-sized companies that will have to do a lot of things differently and do them very quickly. So that's, I think that's what we're going to be talking about 3 to 5 years from now, is how much of that has actually taken place.
Yep. I don't think you're the only one with that sentiment or that opinion or thought process for the future. We will see. I think it's interesting to phrase that as like, it may not be dire. It may just be how things shift and change. We'll have to see, right? That's the thing about future.
Yeah, not change isn't necessarily bad.
Exactly.
What I do know is it's the constant thing. It's always going to change. I do think that's going to be a story we look back on and say, hey, there are only 20,000 printers now, not 32,000. Yeah. And again, it's not that people will be buying less; they may be buying more print.
Right.
But
right.
But if you can't take advantage of agentic commerce, then you're going to have a real tough time. So
absolutely. Well, look, guys, all you Apparelist listeners, we are at the end of our episode. It's definitely been a great conversation. And for those who are ready to push harder outside of your comfort zone and to have conversations with your community, Printing United Expo is where it's taking place in September in Las Vegas. We'll provide plenty of links and registration information in the show notes. And don't forget, you can find the Apparelist podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find us directly on apparelist.com, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and everywhere else. Ford, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Just so thrilled to be here with you today, Cassie, and we will see you soon.